EA College Football 25 is a month away, so you need to start thinking about who you're going to use in your dynasties. Now, first off, I highly recommend using the Create a Team feature for at least one dynasty save file. There's a special connection when you create your own team and can develop his identity from scratch. It's something I wouldn't trade, if you're just looking to do a random rebuild. But if you don't have time for that, I get it, life's busy. I'm going to make your life a little bit easier by giving you 3 to 4 teams from each Group of 5 conference, plus some others in the Power 4 that will be just as hard to rebuild, so you don't have to. Now we're going to start out with the Mountain West, and the Mountain West is arguably the best Group of 5 conference with consistently good programs like Boise State, San Diego State, and Fresno State. And while Boise State will be one of the most electric teams to play with because of Malachi Nelson and Ashton Genty, they obviously don't make this list. And number 1 is the San Jose State Spartans. The Spartans are coming off of their first back-to-back winning seasons since 1992. So you might think it odd for them to be on this list. Well, they're returning just 36% of their production from last year's team because head coach Brent Brennan took the Arizona job. Add on the difficulties of recruiting against many bigger programs in California, and you've got yourself a very tough road ahead to rebuild that roster. You'll have 3 QBs to battle with starting year 1 with a redshirt junior and 2 redshirt sophomores, so there's some upside there to pick your quarterback. But you have just 2 returning all-conference players on the team. The only downside, I think, with this team is that their uniforms are just okay. They don't have some of the best in the game. Number 2 is the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Now, let's be honest, who doesn't want to use the Rainbow Warriors? Hawaii is a fairly talent-rich state, but can you convince that talent to stay home? That's the question. The team's coming off its 4th consecutive losing season, hasn't found much success in the Mountain West as of late. They're 7th in returning production this year, which at least gives you experience. The downside, or upside, depending on how you look at it, is year 2 is going to be really tough. They're a very senior-heavy team, so you're going to have to do an amazing job recruiting year 1 to replenish that roster and keep some of that success rolling over. With some of the cleanest uniforms in the league and a great state pride retro uniform, this team would be very fun to rebuild. The big con for them is they aren't playing in Aloha Stadium anymore, but I'm not sure if that'll be the case in the game, so we'll have to wait to see on that one before you make a decision there. Number 3 is the Air Force Falcons. A little bit of a surprise here, and obviously you're thinking one of the best Mountain West programs over the last 5 years shouldn't be on this list, right? Well, you're wrong. They are bottom 10 in the country in returning production, and let me tell you, they had a lot of dudes on that team last year. You could also choose to play it like a real Armed Forces Academy and not utilize the transfer portal at all. Now, as far as I know, EA hasn't put in a barrier that doesn't allow the academy teams to use the transfer portal, but you can implement that yourself. There's also the added bonus of being able to play Army and Navy every year to compete for the Commander-in-Chief trophy. Now, it's up to you if you want to utilize the existing talent and run the triple option, or get all of your guys in there and revolutionize the way they play. They've also got beautifully sleek uniforms and a good chance at some pretty awesome alternates as well. You really can't go wrong with Air Force. Plus, you get to recruit Colorado, and there's a pretty good foundation there. Number 4 is the Nevada Wolfpack. Now, the past 2 years have been rough for the Wolfpack after Jay Norvell left for Colorado State. They are hemorrhaging in the worst way right now. They need talent desperately. The uniforms are sleek, but they don't have many options. And recruiting in Nevada won't be fun. Your only big rival is UNLV, and they're much better than you right now. So it's a big challenge, which is the appeal of it. You also get to try to recruit California and have some competition with those teams too. So there's a lot of challenge here with Nevada, and I think it's a good program to start with. Next up is the American. Now, if they had Cincinnati and UCF still, they would very much be the best Group of 5 conference in the country. But alas, they were stuck rating the CUSA for programs. So the question is, who should you choose to rebuild out of this conference? And surprisingly, they got a lot of good options. Now, number 1 here is ECU, without question. The Pirates have one of the coolest uniform sets in the country with that purple and yellow combo. The metallic purple makes the helmet pop. It's a lot of fun to play with. Oh yeah, did I mention they also stink? Well, they're coming off a 2-win season, and they will likely be one of the worst-rated teams in the game. They're going to be one of the worst offenses in the country, a far cry from the days of Lincoln Riley as the OC. The defense, however, will have some solid talent, allowing you to make a bowl game in your first season if you can control that offense, not turn the ball over, play a good, solid football games. They also play in North Carolina, which has some of the best collection of venues and programs that you can compete against. We're talking about playing NC State, North Carolina, Wake Forest, Duke, a lot of fun places to play, and that's not even including the other Group of 5 teams like App State. North Carolina and South Carolina are also both recruiting hotbeds that will come in handy, but you're going to have to compete against some big-time programs for them, like I just mentioned. And they have a great Group of 5 venue. Dottie Ficken Stadium will be rocking once you're good. So build that program up, and you'll reap some benefits from the fans. Number 2 is the Temple Owls. You ask for a bad football team, I show you the Temple Owls. They've won just 10 games over the past 4 seasons, and only 4 of those are conference wins. But at least they've looked good doing it. The team stinks, though, which makes it all the more rewarding when you have them winning national championships. Granted, it might take you 15 seasons to get there. They have just 5 players on the conference preseason All-American list, 2 of which are the 3rd team, 3 on the 4th team. So it's not a talent-rich program at all. It's really starving for talent. They'll have one of the worst defenses in the country, by the way. The good news, you're in a talent-rich state, in a talent-rich area, not far from New Jersey or the D.C. area. The bad news, no one wants to play for a school that has 0 atmosphere. The campus is in the heart of Philadelphia. They play at Lincoln Financial Stadium. It just does not have good attendance. It's very tough to convince someone to play in that kind of atmosphere. Matt Rule is really one of the only guys that has had consistent success there, so it can be done, but it's going to take every ounce of strength and patience for you to get there. Number 3 is the North Texas Mean Green. Have you ever been to Denton, Texas? My guess is probably not, so good luck trying to get recruits to go there over Austin and Houston. The Mean Green haven't won more than 7 games since 2018 and are in desperate need of a rebuild. They have a great uniform set, though, that'll help you look good while maybe not playing so good. The good news is the offense should be one of the best at the group of 5 level. The bad news, however, is the defense will be one of the worst 5 in the country. But who can turn down the opportunity to recruit the state of Texas? Even if all of your top targets are being taken by Texas and Texas A&M, there's still a great wealth of talent to choose from that'll help you rise up the ranks pretty quickly. Now, 4th is a bit of a combo here. I couldn't decide, which one to put on, so I put on both Army and Navy. The challenge with both of these schools is really the same as Air Force. They both play in the same conference now, even though Army-Navy is technically not a conference game. They're tough places to recruit. They're in the Northeast. It's not a great hotbed outside of D.C. and New Jersey. And again, you can decide whether or not you want to commit to not using the transfer portal, or you can use it and say, screw the legislation. I'm going to do it anyway. You can also run the triple option or make them air raids. It's really your decision. And that's the cool thing about these teams is that while they have a lot of tradition, there's really a lot of ways you can go with them. And when you talk about alternate uniforms, they have the best in the country. I'm not sure how many are going to be in the game, but if you even have 2 from the past couple of years, it's 100% worth it to play as these teams. And before we get out of the American, I want to tell people, do not rebuild Memphis. They don't need it. They're going to be one of the best teams in the American this year and might even win the thing. So if you are thinking about using Memphis, don't. It's not a rebuild. It's really just how quickly can I get this team from the group of 5 to the Power 5 level. That's really all it is. Now we can head to the most fun of all the conferences in the entire country. How do I know? Well, it's called the Fun Belt for a reason. They also still have divisions, which makes them the only conference that does it now, which, fun, right? You have a chance to play in your conference championship game, even if you lose a conference game. The Sun Belt is chock full of teams that people will want to rebuild, so there's going to be no shortage of that kind of content. They have 4 new teams that weren't in the game in 2013, and I know a lot of you will want to play with them, but only one of them is going to show up on my list. A little bit surprising there, and I think you're going to be surprised by who it is. But the number 1 team you have to think about rebuilding in the Sun Belt is Old Dominion. If look good, feel good, play good was a team, it's Old Dominion. Aside from the fact that they are a projected bottom 25 team in the country this year. So the Monarchs are going to their 11th season as an FBS team, and all they have to show for it is 1 year with a winning record. It has been rough in Norfolk. And you can truly be this team's Lord and Savior, which is the cool thing about it. If you want a difficult place to start based on location, you're either going in Texas or you're starting at ODU. They're located in Norfolk, like I just mentioned. And if you're up to date on your geography, you know they have to compete with the North Carolina schools as much as the Virginia schools. And Virginia Tech is coming back, by the way. There is no tradition for you to fall back on. I mean, Taylor Heineke is probably the best player in Old Dominion history. The only recruiting pitches that you have are you play in a fun conference, you got cool uniforms, and guys will play right away. But that's it. Number 2 is Arkansas State. Now, scoring touchdowns is fun, right? Waterfalls are pretty cool, wouldn't you say? Now, imagine if we combine those two. I would say that would be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? Well, if those two things resonate with you at all, then Arkansas State is your team. They are quite literally on this list for one reason and one reason only. Every time you score a touchdown, the water starts a-falling. They've also got a good variety of uniform pairings that you can work with. I'm not going to act like Arkansas is this amazing place to recruit or that it's any fun to recruit there. And the only team you don't have to worry about is the Razorbacks. But listen, you're doing it to score touchdowns. It's really the only reason you're going there. Come on now. They have hit a slump recently after being a very consistently good program for the better part of a decade. But come on, do you really need any more selling points other than that waterfall? Number 3 is Southern Miss. Southern Miss is about as bad as they come. After a 7-6 2022, they went a measly 3-9 in 2023, matching their win totals from 21 and 20. It's been tough sledding for one of the more consistently average teams in the belt. Outside of Frank Gore Jr., the team hasn't had much going for it recently, but that can all change if you walk through those doors. They have a great recruiting foundation with Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama all nearby. The best part is they're recruiting with teams that are in the conference and at the same level as they are. It's truly a way for you to get in the door early and become a great recruiter. They also have some nice uniforms too. The black and yellow color scheme really looks good, and the stadium is pretty cool too. Number 4 is where the shot comes in, the James Madison Dukes. I said there would be a new team on this list, and that new team is probably the one you were least expecting. How can a team that was in the conference championship game in just their second year at the FBS level be on this list? Simply put, the Dukes lost their head coach, their all-conference quarterback, and the top 2 wide receivers. They lost 19 guys to the transfer portal after Kirk Cinetti took the Indiana head coaching job. However, replacement head coach Bob Chesney wasted no time getting talent right back in the transfer portal. He brought a good amount of guys from Holy Cross. They were a fantastic FCS team, one of the best in the country. He also brought guys in from P4 programs to help infuse that team with talent. Well, that talent is yours now. You get to recruit Virginia and the DC area, which is amazing. The uniforms are super clean, and it's a program with a lot of history, albeit at the FCS level. Obviously, people are going to want to start with App State and Coastal as well. They're going to be popular teams. The choice is yours, but I would really look at starting with James Madison. Conference USA is a who's who of nobodies and newbies. If you want to check out the new teams, this is your place. You want to check out the teams that have been relegated to the basement of college football? This is also your place. There's such a great array of team history here and lack of talent that it's tantalizing. It's going to be tough to say no to this conference when you're starting out. The only rule is that you can't pick Liberty. Starting off, we're going to go with Kennesaw State. Now, I'd be lying if I said this was some under-the-radar sneaky pick. Everyone knows they'll stink, and everybody is going to try and use them to start. They're a new team. What can you say? They have some of the nicest uniforms, though, in all of college football, and they get to play in Georgia, which means you get to recruit Georgia. It's going to be really hard to recruit, though, because you got to go against Georgia and Georgia Tech and Clemson and Alabama and Auburn and all of those teams. You're going to have to try to compete with them in that recruiting battle. But it's a challenge. It's also going to be really hard to win games. But that's what it's all about, isn't it? That's why you're rebuilding them. Their offense is going to be bad. Like probably scoring 13 points per game bad. You remember Iowa? Yeah, it's going to be like that, except probably worse. Their defense will be able to get some stops against other CUSA opponents, but good luck when it comes to playing any other team with a pulse. Although first season in the FBS, maybe a shock the world. We're going to go with another new team in Sam Houston. It's crazy, I know. There's so many new teams here, and you're probably getting sick of it. But maybe you're not. Maybe you only want to play with the new teams. I don't know. Whatever tickles your fancy. Sam Houston also stinks though, but they stink in Texas instead of Georgia. It's exciting, isn't it? They have a great base uniform, but there isn't much customization to it. It's just orange and white, so you can't really do much with that. Their stadium looked cool in the gameplay trailer, so that's why I'm putting them here. You can't blame me, right? I mean, I'm excited for this game. You're excited for this game. And they were one of the group of 5 teams to be showcased, so I'm going to put them here. They are just another team in desperate need of some TLC, though. Maybe that can be you. And number 3 is a team that I could not leave off this list, the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. And this is one of those teams that I do not care how good they are. If I'm making a list of teams to play with in Dynasty, the Hilltoppers are going to be on it. They have some of the most fun uniforms in the game right now, and they have the best mascot in all of college football. And they have some exciting weapons on offense. What more could you possibly ask for? Yes, they're good, but remember, they're CUSA good. So there's still plenty of room to improve and get to that national level of competition. You'll have to replace all-conference quarterbacks Austin Reed and third-round draft pick Malachi Corley, which will certainly be no easy task. However, you might have a little bit more success here than you do at a Sam Houston or Kennesaw State. I'm not going to act like this pick was based on toughness of the rebuild. I mean, come on, this is a vibes pick. The Hilltoppers, you get to see that guy every game? Are you kidding me? Yes, please. And finally, for the group of 5, the best conference in the entire country. America's conference, if you will. The Mid-American Conference. Talk about blue collar, bring your lunch pail to work, first one in, last one out mentality. That's this conference. If there's one thing they know, it's parity. They're somehow so good and yet so bad at the same time. There's nothing quite like that midweek action. So without further ado, number 1, the Ohio Bobcats. Some say the Bobcats are the best team in the country. I'm not saying that, but some are. When you win 10 games in back-to-back years, you should be rock solid to have another great year, but not if you lose 21 guys to the transfer portal. That's not just to some random schools that they lost them to either. It's the freaking P4. Here are some of the schools that those 21 players transferred to: Indiana, Cal, Rutgers, Colorado, Minnesota, UCF, Ohio State, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Pitt. I mean, come on. You said that list is an all-star team of talent. The replacement talent is coming from the FCS level. Can it work? Well, you're going to have to be the judge of that. Yeah, I forgot to mention, they have one of the best young running backs in the country in Ricky Hunt. So that'll be fun to use in year 1 and year 2. He's a redshirt freshman. Most of the talent was lost on the offensive side of the ball, so you're going to have to try and figure out your way through that. The defense, however, still has some great talent for the Group of 5 level and is looking like it can be a top 50 unit in the sport after being top 10 last year. Great uniforms, too, is a plus, and Peden Stadium is one of the best G5 atmospheres in the entire country. Number 2 is a team that had a great 2022, but an awful 2023. That's right, I'm talking about the Kent State Golden Flashes. One of the best offenses in 2022, and then Sean Lewis decided that he didn't want to be a head coach anymore and became the offensive coordinator at Colorado. Didn't work out too well for him, did it? The transfer portal absolutely ravaged them after that season, and they just struggled to get that talent back. And they have either some of the best uniforms in college football or some of the worst, depending on who you ask. Personally, I don't mind them, but listen, if you don't like them, don't use them, right? This is truly a from-the-bottom rebuild. Historically, they've been bad. Really no good seasons to talk about. Sean Lewis was really the only guy that ever had a pulse here. Recruiting Ohio is going to be a lot of fun. I didn't mention it with the Bobcats, but there's a lot of talent in this state, and a lot of it goes overlooked by Ohio State because they're too busy looking at guys from California. So get your guys in there. You can even recruit Pennsylvania and Michigan, too, right there on the border. Perfect location for Kent State. And for as bad as Kent State is, Akron is way worse. That's why they're number 3 on this list. If you want to have a fun offense in year 1, do not pick Akron. They are garbanzo beans. Now, DJ Irons is still around, so at least you have experience in your quarterback position for year 1, which can help you going into some of those road atmospheres, but it's going to make you want to pull your hair out, and they don't even have that great of uniforms. And they also had one of the biggest logo downgrades of all time. Now that we got those guys out of the way, let's talk about some of the most ruthless rebuilds you could possibly do. Now, everyone says you have to start at a small school if you want to do a proper rebuild. I would argue it's harder to rebuild a bad team in a good conference. I think you all know exactly who I'm talking about and who I'm taking with my number 1 pick here. That's right, it's Vanderbilt. The only time this program was actually good post-1960 was with James Franklin in the early 2010s. It is nearly impossible to win there. I mean, you could argue with me for days on end and still not convince me that there's a harder rebuild than the Vanderbilt Commodores. It's the worst team in the hardest conference. We're talking about playing in the SEC with some of the toughest environments week to week in college football. This is an academic and baseball school. Football is essentially an afterthought. They do not care about that sport there. On top of those limited resources, you compete with Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama for recruits right in your backyard. That doesn't sound easy, does it? What do you have to pitch these guys other than playing time? Now, at least the stadium will be finished in the game. That's basically the only plus to doing it. Probably the hardest rebuild in the entire game. Number 2 is not too far behind. It's Indiana. Even with Kirk Cignetti doing everything he can to portal and talent, that team is still lacking some in that department. And if you thought Vanderbilt's football history was bad, wait until you see Indiana's. They've never, not once in their entire history, had a double-digit win season. They've been playing football there since 1899. Now, if you're bad at math, that's 125 seasons of football without winning 10 or more games. They straight up do not have the talent to compete at the Big Ten level, yet they maintain their membership. They have pretty solid uniforms and a decent stadium, but that's about it. They will be pummeled week in and week out, which is why you need to help them. They're recruiting Indiana, which is not great, but the good news is they're surrounded by other great states when it comes to recruiting. They're going to be okay defensively, but probably a bottom 40 offense, which sounds tough, doesn't it? Take them at your own risk. We're going to head out east for number 3 for the Boston College Golden Eagles. They've won double-digit games just twice since 1985. They had back-to-back seasons in 06 and 07 of those double-digit wins, and since then it's been a lot of mediocrity paired with a lot of bad. Jeff Hafley just left to go to the NFL, and now Billy O'Brien is taking over, but maybe you can do a better job than he can. The thing about Boston College that separates it from the other rigorous academic institutions is that the East Coast is majorly lacking in football talent. It's just so tough to recruit good football players to play at a bottom-tier ACC school. They won't be good on offense or defense this year, and you have to compete with schools that are consistently recruiting the South. On the flip side, their uniforms are pretty cool, and the red bandana uniform is one of the coolest in the entire sport. Number 4 is Houston. Now, Houston really doesn't have an excuse to be bad. It's an awesome university that plays in a good conference. That's recent, I know. But it's literally one of the best hubs for athletes in the entire country. Their base uniforms aren't great. They have some of the coolest alternates in the game. Playing in the Big 12 is a major selling point simply because it's the parity. You have a chance every single year to win that conference and really take over. You also get to recruit Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. What more do you need? They have the history. They have the resources. It's just about getting results. I think this would be a super fun team to do it with. The last one is a combination again. It's either Washington State or Oregon State. It's mostly just because I'm really curious how this is going to work out in the game with there being only 2 teams in the Pac-12. Now, both, however, are going to be great rebuilds. Oregon State because of Jonathan Smith leaving and all of their star players leaving too. And Washington State because of its star players going to just make more money like Cam Ward. Both have great uniforms and cool atmospheres though, so that's a plus there. You get to play in the Pacific Northwest. You get to play Oregon. You get to play Washington. Now you play the Mountain West teams too. I don't know if I should have included them in that list. But they have good recruiting foundations based on location, like Washington, a little bit of Oregon. But you also get California too. Either one will be worth your time. I just don't know if it's worth it to be your first one considering they have a little bit more brand equity than some of these other schools. I just gave you 23 different options to start your dynasty with, so don't say that you don't know where you're going to go. I do understand there's a lot to process and everybody has their own opinion, but I really do think that these are some of the best rebuilds that you're going to have right off rip. I hope this helped you on your journey to picking your first dynasty team and hopefully the one that you use for 15, 20 seasons on the game. So thank you all so much for watching. See ya.
Yeah, so I'm just now realizing that I forgot UConn and UMass because they're independents, and so when I was looking at the conferences, they didn't show up. Obviously, those 2 teams are also great for rebuilds, and being independents gives you flexibility with your scheduling, so you can schedule harder opponents, you can schedule easier opponents, but it's really up to you. Now, UMass is joining the MAC next season, so if you want to do that, you can also do that, become another MAC team. UConn, on the other hand, not really in talks with any conference, but it's the same challenges with Boston College. You're going to have to recruit the Northeast really well, even though there's not a lot of talent. Both sets of jerseys are pretty cool. I think UConn's got a great logo, a great base. UMass, I'm a little indifferent on how they look, but I think you can't go wrong with either of these rebuilds. There's just really nothing to play for during the season because there is no conference championship.